Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Grief Let's Talk About It podcast. And as always, I am Tony Netch. I'm your host. Now, before we get started, I would like to say we got an amazing guest with an amazing journey. She is here. She's going to bless us with her presence today and her story. And if you guys haven't already, head over to the YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button, hit that bell notification so you'll be notified every time we drop a new episode. But we also want to say this is for educational purposes only. So if you guys are struggling and need support, we do have a list of resources for you to get that help that you need. Now, without further ado, I have my colleague, I have my friend and wonderful person, Patrice Jackson, is here today. And, I'm going to let her tell her journey, right? But I want her to tell you guys where she's from and who she is. Patrice, how you doing today, my friend?
I am fine. How are you doing today?
I am doing well. I'm always on the move doing things. So
Right. Listen, I get it. Busy, but productive is what I call it.
this is very true, right? And I'm just like, wow, I'm okay with that, right? One step forward, man. And I'm saying a step
Yes.
forward is always a good thing.
Yes,
So
very true.
go ahead and introduce yourself, tell people where you're from.
Well, okay, so as you said, my name is Patrice Jackson. However, I am Patrice MsSavvyPro Jackson on the internet. And I am from Cleveland, Ohio. That's where I'm based. But of course, like I tell my clients, I do have a laptop and I will travel. So I'm from Cleveland, but I'll go. You know, can be anywhere in the world. It's sometimes. And like I said, my name is Miss Savvy Pro, and that's based off of my business, Savvy Professionals, where we just do virtual personal assisting, and we help entrepreneurs, entertainers, executives just we sweat their small stuff. We help them take all the stuff off their plate when it comes to the administrative and brand marketing. And that's basically the core of who I am.
Now, how did you get into? I mean, because we've talked before, right? And you've always had a professional mindset, but you didn't always start off that way, right? It's kind of like, you kind of bounced around a little bit and everything.
I did.
Yeah.
But
See, I remember.
yeah, right. Yeah. Like, as a kid, I was like a stationary office, like kind of like, junkie, I'll say, right? Like, my mother knew, back then you could leave your kids kind of in the store, but my mother would be going in the store. We would go to Woolworths, which is an old store. It's not here anymore.
Oh, girl, look, don't
That's
you be
right.
talking
I'm
all that
aging
right now.
myself.
You already know. Don't you be talking. She done brought up some old Woolworth. I'm
Right.
done with you
Right.
already. I'm with you
Yes.
already.
Yeah. And we would go there, and she would just take me to the stationery aisle and just leave me there. And I would be there probably for hours, and she shopped, and I was happy. She was my mom. Part of her job, she was a manager, so I kind of played office with her. But you're right. As years went on, and I became older, I got away from that, like totally away from it. And when I got to high school, um there was like a program in high school where it was like about business administration and marketing, and I was going to do that, but I don't know, somewhere along the line I wanted to do what my friends were doing, and I got into cosmetology, right? So I went to cosmetology school in high school, and because I had got off track of what my goals were, I had to um kind of like double down on some classes. So during that period of time, I I was going to school for half a day, and then I would leave, and I would go to like an internship at a hair salon for cosmetology, and then I also worked at McDonald's and Dots. Well, Dots, it was a clothing store, and I still had to go to night school for a math class because I got off track, right? Because I got to go, and the things I needed were different now. So so I was doing that, and I got off track, and I went back to school. And when I graduated from high school. I did take some college courses at first, right? And I was, I was just doing a little bit of everything. I was always trying to be within the business administration portion of it all. But I was still like working other jobs. I worked a lot of like retail, not anything, honestly, to just be on course or track of what my dream was, who I was as a kid, and what I always wanted to do.
Right.
And then that's what it was, right? And so finally, how I got to becoming MsSavvyPro or being savvy professionals was my grandmother. My grandmother was older. My grandmother's always been older when it comes to being a grandmother. She wasn't in like the range of like everybody else in my friends. So she was sick, and I had got laid off. And when I got laid off, I was like, hey, I was in a financial situation where I was able to just stay off work for a while and just kind of like make sure my grandmother was okay, and just hang out with her for some reason. I didn't know why I needed to do that, but I just made this decision. And so for a year, I stayed off and I just hung with my grandmother. We just did all kinds of stuff and went to lunch and just spent time with her. But in the same portion of that, same part of that, a lot of my friends and people were like, hey, I know you off work and I know you really like administrative stuff. Can you help me with my business? Can you help me with this? All these different things. And I was like, I guess, like, yeah, I can help.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so, they would pay me. And so I kind of started like a concierge business. And I think I started off, it was like called Shekinah's Gift. And so I did that. And that was like a little bit of extra money. And it was helping me kind of like be, you still need that thing to wake you up in the morning. And it was like that, yeah. And that's what that was for me. And so it was great. My grandmother ended up going to the hospital. And when she went to the hospital, I was like, that was the same time I was going back to work. I'm like, well, it's time to go back to work. She went to the hospital. She never left the hospital. But it was, I was really into church. I was really like into ministry at church, as well as, doing the concierge service. And it was those two things that helped me keep my sanity when, my grandmother passed away. My grandmother was my best friend. When I was a kid, they called me her shadow. Right? Like, so, right. So, when she passed, it could have been devastating, but because of where I was and what I was doing, it wasn't devastating. It was hard, it was challenging, but it wasn't the devastation that I thought it would have been. Even though she was older, even though she was sick, and I had time to kind of, you start to kind of grieve people
Right.
when they're passing. And so I had that opportunity, I guess, but it's still, it was I wasn't just out of it like I thought I would have been, and like I was when my mom passed away a little bit later. But that's who I am.
Wow, you got hit. I mean, you lost some pretty significant people.
Yeah.
I, for one, understand what it's like to have a bond with our grandmothers, right?
Right.
And judging from what you said about Woolworth, I don't know why you calling me out like that, right? You know what I'm saying? Got my age all out here, all
right.
just put it on blast like that. You know what, Patrice? I'm over it already. All right.
Yes, I know.
But
I aged myself.
you said that I don't think people really understand, and those that do not understand, their heart is probably crying right now because, having that bond with your grandmothers, and when you're fortunate enough to have that in your life
Yeah.
and it's taken away from you. I mean, regardless if they get older or not, right? We often think of our grandmothers, our grandparents as our superheroes because
Right.
those are the ones that protect us from our parents,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Especially when they want to beat us up. Come
Right.
here, I'm going to grandma's house because you know what I'm saying, I know you ain't gonna do nothing if I'm over there, right? Because
Right. Exactly.
grandparents kind of protect us and everything.
Yep.
And then they teach us all of those valuable things like learning how to cook, learning, I learned how to cook, I learned how to sew. All of those different things, man. And I'm listening to you, and I was smiling when you was like, I was a little shadow, right?
Right.
So that tells you right then and there. But the anticipatory grief that comes along with that is still painful. And then you said something. I want to touch on this a little bit. Your mother passed away sometime after that as well.
Yeah.
So now, but you did have the church. How moving from, growing through the process of losing your grandmother and also losing your mother, how are you, how did you deal with that moving forward? Because you got two significant women in your life that are very, and I can hear it in your voice, very, very influential on
Yeah.
you, and the things that you've done, and are still doing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So going through that process, because that's a combination.
Mm-hmm.
How
Mm-hmm.
how are you how are you moving through that grieving process, and what does it look like at that moment?
Wow. So, like I said, when my grandmother passed away, I was able to kind of like go through the process and keep my sanity. But when my mom passed away some years later, it was totally different,
Right.
right? Like when my mom went to the hospital, she, it was kind of like surprising when she went. She went she went to a doctor's appointment. She came
Hmm.
home and they called her back before the end of the day and said, "You need to come back. You need to come back to the hospital." And so that was the second time that had happened to her. But this time she went in and she never came out. She was there for a little bit over 2.5 months. The first month of that, I lived in hospital. I lived in Cleveland Clinic. I would sleep in the waiting room. I would go home every day, every other day or so, and I would go home to like shower, get new clothes, kind of get a few more snacks.
Hmm.
And also at the same time, my mother's my stepfather, my mother's husband, he had just had his leg amputated and was
Oh, wow.
still in the nursing home. So I would have to go to him, get his clothes to wash, bring him his snacks, make sure he was okay, go home, take a nap, because it was hard to really get real sleep in the hospital, and then do everything I need to do, and then drop his stuff off, and then go right back to the hospital and be there for another 2 or 3 days. And it was a lot, because I watched her pass away. She would have days where she was very she would be just out, or some days she wasn't really there. She would be hallucinating and things like that because of what was going on in her body. And it was hard, it was really hard. And afterwards, after she actually passed away, I was kind of like not catatonic, but just numb, very numb.
Right.
I would lay in the bed for days and just lay there. It got so bad that I had lost. Um, of course, I gained weight just from laying there and just eating and watching TV. And I even had lost like kind of like definition in my leg. They were weak because of that. And so you know, it was very hard. Like it was just like the grief was hard. Like it was like it lingered. Like it was funny because after some time, I actually moved to Georgia, and in moving to Georgia, I was by myself. I didn't go with anyone else. Excuse me. I didn't go with anyone else. So I was by myself, and I decided to kind of like work on my mental health. And excuse me, I'm sorry. Work
No
on my mental
worries.
health. And so I got a after I went to start going to therapy. And one day it was weird. She asked me, "Well, how long had she had?" I remember I had mentioned some like at the beginning of our sessions. I told her like, "Oh, my mother had been married. I mean, not married. Sorry, she had been gone for like 4 years." And so time went by, and it was like a regular anniversary of her death. And I mentioned the year, and so my therapist was like, first of all, let me talk about my therapist. She must have been listening, but my therapist was like, "Wait a minute, that's 7 years."
Hmm.
And I was like, "Huh?" She was like, "You said she been gone for 4 years, but in this year, that's 7." And so I did not know I had lost 3 years just being numb, um,
Hmm.
and trying to like get better. I had lost those 3 years. Like it was so bad. Like I didn't want to leave my house. I really didn't hang out with my friends when I was in Cleveland. Then when I moved to Georgia, it was like kind of like a shock, and I needed that three. I needed the years of when I moved to Georgia to kind of get back to myself. But it's never when you lose someone so close to you, parents, loved ones, stuff like that. That's close. You're different. You're never the same person
Oh
that
yeah.
you were before
Oh
they
yeah.
they passed.
No.
And so that's what I
Um,
realized,
and it's interesting that you said that because um, losing time after you lose someone is a very, very common thing, and people don't really understand that, right?
Mhm.
I didn't understand it,
Right,
right? And I guess when you're in that moment, you're just in those moments, right? You know what I'm saying? And days just go, no concept of time, especially when you're not with it all the way, right? You know what I'm saying?
right.
You're still reminiscing on the past, the relationship, um, memories and things like that. And it's kind of, and here's something that I realized: the realities were blended.
Mm, yeah,
The reality, and what I mean by that, right? In one part, I'm in the real world, right?
right.
But I'm still working. And but look.
Yeah,
There's two plus years where I couldn't tell you what I did.
yeah, yep,
I could not
yep,
tell you what I did, but I know I paid bills. I
right,
know I went to work, but I couldn't tell you a conversation I had with anyone. I couldn't
yep,
tell you a TV show that I watched. I couldn't tell you anything that I did, right? But I know I was doing it. It was like routine for me, right? And I think the terminology for it is grief fog,
yeah, okay,
right?
yeah.
Is grief
Mhm.
fog. So, and I didn't understand that neither. You know what I'm saying? I didn't learn that until a little bit afterwards. But what I mean by the blending of realities, because in the same sense, your mind doesn't want to let go
Mm,
of the individual that you have. So we have a tendency of blending the reality that we live in and the past because we still think that they're there.
yeah, yeah, yep.
Yeah, but
I would
but
think
and
sometimes
that's
like,
mentally.
right,
Right? We still want that phone call. Hey, come pick
yep,
such and such up from the hospital. Or hey, can you come take me here, there's and the other? Or in your case, can you come take me to Woolworth? You know
right,
what I'm saying?
right, right.
Man, those are the
Exactly.
times though. But and it's crazy, right? And thank you for sharing that because um man, you hear so many stories about it. And we often think when someone says something like, your wake up call, like, hold on, I lost 3 years,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And you don't know where they went.
Yep.
So many people go through that and they go, man, I must be crazy.
Yeah.
I must be crazy, right? Because there ain't no way I can lose that much time and this, that, and
Right.
other. I'm here to tell you that you can. Like,
Yep.
it's a very common thing. But I'm glad that you mentioned a part about mental health, and I want to touch on that, right? Because it's so hard for people to understand that mental health is a very it's a silent killer.
Mm,
And if you don't know what mental health looks like, or how it manifests itself into the world, you often don't know what to look for, right?
yep.
You just think that it's a natural part of life.
Yep.
Life beats you down. You may get into the depressive state. You may, be overly anxious. Over all of these, and these are just some of the common things. So let's talk about your mental health, right?
Mm.
And what was the deciding factor after you realized that your mental health wasn't in a good place?
It was a couple of things. So I've always been like an advocate of mental health. My mother was as well. Even as a kid, she would take me to the therapist from time to time. So it was normal to me on that level.
Okay.
And so but I hadn't gone in a while. So when I knew it was there's two things. One, I was sleeping, but it was so bad that I couldn't drive more than 20, 30 minutes because I would fall asleep. I was working, yeah, I was on the phone, like my friends, I could be talking to my friends and we could be having a conversation and I would fall asleep, right? Like I was just in the middle of the conversation, just fall asleep. Like it was like very close to, it wasn't narcolepsy, but it was like that. Like that was the experience.
Yeah.
So part of it was I wasn't getting good sleep. And so I would cry at the littlest things. So don't get me wrong. I'm an advocate for crying for men and women. I think we both, it's a therapeutic.
We've talked about
However,
this. Yeah.
you do got to be concerned if you are crying. I mean, I was crying at like Walmart commercials. Like I was like, it was one commercial and it was where it was a younger male who was helping an older male learn how to read. And I'm like, oh my God, he's going to help him how to read. And I'm like crying and boo-hooing over this one little commercial. And I'm like, anything would make me cry. And it was that. It was like I didn't want to be around people. You know, it was just a lot of things, all of those things that was, like you said, you would think that it's just like, oh, you don't want to be around people because you're really not a people person, really, or you know, you're busy, so that's why you're not. And you know, crying, okay, well, that was sentimental. Maybe you're just, especially as a woman, maybe you're hormonal, you know, or you know, just all these
Right.
different things. And you know, you start to justify it all. But finally, I was like, this is just not normal. I don't feel right. I just need to do better. I need to prioritize myself. Stop, you know, distracting myself with, you know, work or friends, or you know, just distracting myself with little things instead of facing it. And and so I just said, let me look for. So I started looking for a therapist in my area with the things that, well, some of the things that I needed this therapist to have, right? Because
Mhm.
I'm a PK, right? Preacher's kid. So I knew I needed to make sure that I had a therapist that knew, that either at least understood Christian culture, right? Church culture. I wouldn't say
Right.
Christian culture, church culture, you know, because that was a big of who I am. I did want an African American woman, because I wanted them to understand my plight in the world, you know,
Mhm.
but also someone who, like when my sessions, I went to one therapist and she was okay, but it was one thing I had told her. I was like, oh, I laid in the bed and I just cried all day. And she was like, oh, that's normal. That's okay. Like she was just so okay with it. She didn't ask about it. She told me it was good. I'm like, well, no, I don't want to do that. That's why I'm here. You know, like so.
Right. Right.
Or like
Right.
if it's okay, explain to me why. And so I finally found my therapist. And let me shout her out because I love her. Her name is Jacqueline Jackson out of Georgia. Love her. And so I found her and she was like, I told her, I was like, hey, I want to do the work. I want homework. I want this. I want all these things. And she was there. And, you know, I think it's been about 4 years. Excuse me. 4 years since we've been working together. And it was the best thing I did.
Wow. See, I'm listening to it, and I'm just thinking to myself, like, wow, that's taking some steps, right? And a lot of people don't even know where to start when it comes down to that.
Yeah.
And the importance of the importance of having someone around you that looks like you, that can understand what you're going through, but it's funny that you said, no, I don't want to do that, right? When she's like, no, this is totally normal, you're like, no, I don't, you don't understand, I don't want to do that. But I do understand, and this is, as a male, it was so hard for me to admit this, how messed up I was.
Mm.
um it was so hard to admit the endless nights of crying,
Mm-hmm.
thinking that I was going crazy,
Mm-hmm.
putting on a mask, what I'm saying? Because everybody, I'm thinking that these are the things that I made up for myself, and I can't speak for everyone else. So anybody out there, if you have anything that you want to add to it, or maybe a personal experience about that, please add it into the comments. We love to get those things, and if you have a question for either myself or Patrice, by all means, put those in the comments as well. We will be answering those as Patrice tells her story. But I was so afraid about the term mental health,
Mm-hmm.
because in the Black community, especially in the generation that we grew up in, everybody's different. You grew up around mental health and things like that. I didn't, right? So
Mm-hmm.
when it came down to it, mom was like, "Oh, this is what you got going on? Pow, pop you upside the head. Go work it out." We had to work through our stuff, right? Say,
Right.
or either
Right.
express it, suppress it to the point to where, eventually as we get older, we become the adults that we are from unhealed trauma and situations and things like that. So it took me a long time to learn, right? That I wasn't crazy, that mental health was a real thing. And it didn't mean that I had a problem. It just meant that I had to deal with a lot of things and hold myself accountable. Now, as a male, now I'm an advocate. I tell men all the time, hey, get that stuff out of there. I was just talking with one of my clients the other night, and I told him, I said, look here, man, someone told him in his family that, as a male, it's not okay to not be okay.
Right. You just gotta, I've heard
Yeah,
that.
you gotta man up, right? You gotta man up. You gotta push through. And it teed me off to a point to where I texted back. I said, whoever fuck told you that, they need to go and kick themselves in the ass, because no, we're not doing that. I said, my man, you just experienced some traumatic losses. And what you're doing right now is that you're suppressing your true nature. I said, let me ask you a question. Do you live and breathe as a human being? Yeah. I said, then you also come equipped with a heart.
Right.
And you come equipped with these emotions. It's not going to make you less than a man. As a matter of fact, in my opinion, real men cry.
Yeah.
Right. Real men can come up and tell everybody, look, I'm not okay right now. And the people who care about you be like, that's okay.
Yeah.
Those that don't care about you, let them walk away, right? It's not a big thing. You during this journey, this is what you get from time to time. And I remember, I'm gonna keep bringing this up too, right? Woolworth. I remember getting laid out in Woolworth because my mom. I told my mom, I said, "Look, I think something's wrong with it." She laid me out in Woolworth, right?
Yeah, it doesn't. Like they'll be like, "What's that one? It's this one meme." They'll say, like, "Mom, I'm depressed," and they'll be like, "You better depress them dishes." Like, right?
Exactly.
It's not working, like.
Exactly. What do you mean you depressed? What are you depressed over? You got a perfect life. I think now when we look back, especially with the youth that we have right now, we see the things that are in us, or that used to be in us, right? Because we had to heal. We had to learn to educate ourselves. Like, I love the fact that, you dove into it and was like, give me the homework, do all of these things. Now let me ask you a question. What does homework and mental health look like? Because I read many programs, but I've never given homework before.
A lot of times it was okay. So, one of the things that I was working on was boundaries, and also I wanted to know why I had, like, I was an emotional eater. So, I would have to do, like, journal, like, okay, well, when you feel this, journal it, so it was a lot of journaling, or it would be like worksheets with like different questions of like, hey, when you wake up in the morning, how do you feel, and do that for a week and tell me what happened the day before. Like, so what was going on the night before? And then you woke up in the morning, you felt this, or, it would just be, it was like basically like just questions, journals, and prompting journal questions. And from her giving me those worksheets and answering me these questions or having me chart things, it became normal to me. Like, one of the things that I found out was that when I was in Georgia, I had a walk-in closet, and it was huge. Like, it could have been like a second bedroom if it had a window. It was really big. And so it was set up where I had chairs and tables and stuff in there. And I would realize that when I was really depressed, I would go in my closet and I would feel so comfortable, like so at peace and calm in that small closet, And I realized that having big spaces was too much for me. It gave me anxiety. So I realized, no, when I move again, I wanted like an efficiency or a very small 1 bedroom. And like, I realized that I wanted to truly live in a tiny home. So those were things that I learned about myself. Those are the things that I realized, okay, when I'm nervous or anxious, okay, well, you need to go to a smaller space and, just kind of sit down, calm, do some breathing exercises and let that work. Or when I, like now, I can see when I'm going when I'm about to enter into certain types of mental health like crisis, I can see it, so I can kind of like yeah, I know I'm going to do it. I know it's that period of time. Like for instance, February is really hard for me because it's my mom's birthday. But the thing about it is, I used to didn't know why. I would just get so depressed and couldn't do things in February, right? I didn't know, but now I know because of the charting that I'm like, okay, it's because it's your mom's birthday. You get to that point. So now I make sure I plan a lot of stuff with my friends and my family. And, I eat foods that are better for your mental health. And I do all the things I need to do, or like even with my business for my clients. I do a lot of stuff in advance. So that once I get into February, if I'm not mentally there, I could just be like, okay, I can push myself to send out an email because all that stuff is already done. Right. So doing the charting, doing the journaling, it helped me realize where my weak points were, and helped me to, kind of plan for those points because it's going to happen. My mother's birthday is going to come around on February 23rd every year,
Exactly. Exactly.
and, I'm still at the point, like you were saying earlier, about how you in like this different reality, like this double reality, it was a long time where, my mom, when I leave work, I will always call my mom. And when I left work, I still wanted to do that, right?
Right.
Or like, for my mom, it would be like, Ma, like that was my person. I would call like, guess what happened? Or guess who passed away? And it took me a long time to be like, I used to want to call my mom, like, girl, guess who died? You dad, girl, like that. And I wanted to do that so bad, like
Yeah,
it was
yeah.
so bad. I'm like, girl,
I'm laughing, but it's some true stuff right
yeah.
there, right? You know what I'm saying? I'm only laughing because you gave me the okay. I saw you laughing too.
Yeah,
So
I was waiting for calls.
I'd be like, because I can relate what you just said right
Right,
there,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
When you said that, I was
Yeah,
like,
I'm at
this is
that
my
place. Yeah,
sister,
it's just and it's funny because I used to be like,
another mother right here. No, definitely
right,
understand
right,
that.
yeah,
You know,
like yeah, I'm at that place like where, yeah, and I realize now too, like one of the things I did realize in my grandmother's passing, because I was there when she literally was losing her breath, and we prayed beforehand, and I know this may be weird to say, and a lot of people probably will not agree with me, but when you have someone who lived a wonderful, well, who lived a life, right, who left a legacy of love and encouragement on people, and you see them pass away, it was beautiful. My grandmother passed away, it was beautiful to see God take her. Like it was, I seen it. I mean, don't get me wrong, I was crying, about to pass out. But at the same time, as I look back, it was like a light was shining on her. It was just a beautiful moment. And for me, that's what I kind of like see death. When you grief is really very selfish. And as a Christian, you think, you're thinking, hey, this person going to heaven. So you kind of think like, well, they're going to a better day. That's what you're. They went to a better place, right? But it is very selfish. And, I basically, just a long story short, I was able to process my grief for not just the deaths that I had, but just things that I lost and changes that were made. So, having that homework, having a therapist that really was ready to take on the things that I needed to handle and work on has been a blessing to me, a really big blessing. Um, and we still work together, even though she's out of Georgia. We still have virtual appointments. When I, go back to visit, I would, have sessions with her. So I am happy that I finally found her, and was able to work on the things that I needed to work on. I think we lost me.
all right, we are back. Sorry about that. My internet
Yeah, sorry.
was off.
Yeah, no,
So
I understand. I'm in Ohio, so ours is acting crazy from the snow.
yeah, see, and we just got done with that cold freeze out here,
Okay.
-degree temperatures. So of course,
Ooh,
uh,
no.
yeah, it's pretty. It's been pretty gnarly. I'm just okay. So I just got pulled back up on the Instagram. So yeah, where you left off at, we was talking about what were we talking about before we got
Oh yeah, so we were just saying about like working, the work that my therapist gave me.
Yes, yes,
Yeah,
yes.
this charting. So like I said, like it was just been a blessing. It was just helpful for me to recognize what would trigger my grief or what triggers for me, and just to be prepared for when I know those triggers. When I know some triggers was just going to be there. Of course, you're not
Mm-hmm.
going to be able to know everything because it could be a smell, a song that would
Mm-hmm.
trigger something, but it will
Right.
help me to cope. And my therapist is always like, look, I know I'm very busy. She is busy. But she is like, okay, look, if you ever need me, let me know. Just call. Even if we got I would call her and just need to be like, I was so mad about something. And it'd be just 10 or 15-minute sessions. So,
Right.
finding the therapist that works for you is very important, because I know a lot of people go to therapy and they'll go to one therapist and they're like, oh no, it didn't work for me. I'm like, okay, therapist is like finding a mate. You're not gonna just find, you may not find the first one. You got to keep going on dates with your therapist, like, or, go having different sessions until you find one
That's
that works for
true.
you. Mhm.
Yeah. Now, and I really love that you said finding a therapist, because it's, when I work with people or work with men,
Mhm.
trying to find the right type of support for them, I always tell them, look, if I'm not a good fit for you,
Mhm.
let's find a good fit for you, right?
Right.
Because everybody has their own way of doing things, and the last thing I want to do is have you be in a situation to where you feel as if you have to tackle this journey alone.
Mhm.
Uh, and I love the fact of that you talked about boundaries.
Mhm.
So I want to dive a little bit into that, and
Mhm.
describe some of the boundaries that you had to put up, because I know for a lot of people those boundaries are going to be different. Sometimes it's with people, places, things, music, et cetera, right? And I have a
Mhm.
few of those myself. There's some songs I won't listen to. There's some
Right.
people I can't be around. There's
Mhm.
some places I just cannot go. Even though I
Mhm.
do try, it's a trigger for me, right? Um, and there's so many things, certain foods that remind me of of certain things, so I kind of avoid them. I may tiptoe around them a little bit just to see if
Mhm.
I'm still triggered by them
Mhm.
and things like that. So now I'm sure yours is going to be a little bit different from there, or if not a lot different from there. So let's talk about some of the boundaries that you had to set for yourself in order to protect yourself mentally.
Yeah. One of the biggest boundaries is going, like, sometimes with me, like I'm a really big mama bear, right? Like
Yes.
for my friends, right? And so if you're like, once someone is my friend, someone I care about, I am going to be ready to like pounce, like if something is not right, right?
Right.
Like I had a
Right.
friend, and he was in the hospital, and he was like something about the dinner, and I was like, let me call, and I was like, let me call, I'll fix it, but I realized that I was doing entirely too much, right? Like,
Mhm.
yeah, I was doing it because I wanted to be an advocate for my friend, and I wanted them to have um to be at peace with something, and get the best of something,
Mhm.
but I was not asked to do it, right? And sometimes that was my thing. It's like I would jump into action, and sometimes it's not for me. Sometimes I just need to be there to listen. They don't need me to jump into action
Right.
and fix it or give a solution. And I was really like, if somebody would tell me something, I'm like, oh, you should do this, 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 and this, or I'm trying to explain it. And so I got to a point. I heard it on somewhere on social media, and they were saying in a relationship, he would ask his wife, "Do you want a listener or do you want a solver?" Like, what do you want? It like when she would come to him, she would ask one of those different things. And when she would say, "Oh, I just want a listener," that's what he would do. Listen, and
Mm. Like
and
that.
not, yeah, not jump into action. Even though you may have the solution, this is not the time that they want it. They may come back to you and say, "Can you give me the solution?" Or, "I'm ready to fix this issue," or whatever. But if they asked her for a listener, to just be a listener. And it was I'm trying to think of the word, but it was a reminder to me, because when my grandmother passed away, I actually was in, I don't know if you ever heard of grief recovery.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I was in grief recovery, and one of the things they tell you is to be a heart with ears, right?
Mm.
And so
Yes.
I would try to do that, but when I heard that, it kind of made it made more sense to me, and it helped me to be and to jump into action and be that heart with ears and just listen.
Right.
They didn't need that, and so that was one of the boundaries that I had learned along the way. It's like, just calm down. That's one thing. And it helped, that actually helped me in business too, because I love talking about marketing and branding, right? I love it in business. So, if someone would call me, they would say, hey, I'm working on this. And I'm like, oh, you should do this. You should do this to market. And and it'd be good ideas, right? But they looking like, I just wanted to tell you about my idea. I ain't asked you to give me no marketing plan. And then when they wouldn't use the ideas, I would get a little offended because I'd be like, oh my God, I felt like, Erica Badu when she would say, she's like, I'm an artist. And what is that one slash? She like, I'm artist and I'm sensitive about my, what?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah.
oh, well, you're not gonna use my what? And I would get so offended. Excuse me. But I realized that's not what they were asking for, and so it helped me with that, with my relationships and all my relationships. So yeah, that's one of the good things that I learned.
See, I look, that right there is a key point to what you just said. Be a heart with ears.
Mm-hmm.
And this is crazy because, again, I've had these conversations with people, and I was having a conversation with a friend of mine, and she was just primarily like, hey, this and this and this and this. I said, oh, yeah, okay. She goes, well, you ain't got nothing else to say. You ain't got nothing to say. I go, no. Why would I need something to say? Like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm listening to what you're having to say. Like, I don't need to speak. I don't need to say anything. And so a couple of days later, I went to her to have a conversation with her, and she did a few things that I had to stop her on. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I say this to so people are aware of what not to do when you are in someone's space, and they're trying to open up to you to be vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
And, as I was speaking with her, I was having a rough go at it, and I was just like, I just need someone to talk to. I said, I just need someone to talk to. I'm not asking for a conversation. I just need to get this off my chest, because I'm a firm believer. Learn how to communicate, right?
Right. Yeah.
And to the women out there, or to the men out there, if you around someone, learn that. Look, sometimes it's okay to shut up, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? And you can't sugarcoat it. You have to tell. It's okay to shut up.
Mm-hmm.
You don't need to always have a response
Mm-hmm.
to what someone else is saying. And the
Mm-hmm.
reason why I say that, because I've seen, and when you get people who are damaged
Mm-hmm.
from said conversations, it's kind of hard to get them to open up with the next person. So it takes a little
Mm-hmm.
bit to go along with it. So, easily avoidable. Now, and the reason why I say this, and I say that to say this, is, as I'm talking with her, she interrupts me and she goes, well, and then she begins to kind of relate a scenario, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so she kept doing it. Finally, I just stopped. She goes, oh, I was like, no, I don't want to talk anymore. She goes,
Mm-hmm.
why? I said, well, because for one, you don't want to listen to me.
Mm-hmm.
She goes, oh, and I was like, no, you don't want to listen to me. See, you're listening to me, and you're looking for the opportunity to compete through scenarios.
Mm-hmm.
So therefore, why would I want to open up to you? You just now invalidated everything that I was trying to tell you. And the only thing I wanted to do is just talk, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're supposed to be friends.
Right.
But now I understand that this is a one-sided friendship. This is not
I just
a
had that.
two-sided. This is a one-sided friendship. And she goes, no. I said, no, it is. See, you
Mm-hmm.
don't care nothing about what I'm going through, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
trying to get this off, so I'm not carrying it around with me,
Mm-hmm.
in a very negative way. And I thought that you were someone that I could talk to, because we've been knowing each other for quite some time. But I now realize, after all of these many years, it's really not like that with you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
This is all about you. Like, no matter what I say, no matter what I do, you've made it about you. So I don't want to talk anymore. Women, I, piece of advice: when men try to open up to you like that, do not discredit them, because what you end up doing is that you close them off.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and you cut out pieces of them that you're asking for. And the problem is that when you cut off those pieces, you're now cutting off the pieces of that individual that you're asking for.
Mm-hmm.
They're not going to come back after that. So you
Mm-hmm.
cannot say, I want an emotionally intelligent man to be able to communicate effectively what's going on, and then cut those pieces out from him. Because what happens is that that male will become a version of himself to where he can survive in the world, and he will show up in survival mode with you because you've just now put them in that situation.
Mm-hmm.
And and that's just a suggestion. It's never advice. I never gave advice to people and things like that. But this is just an observation. Saying you cannot complain that men aren't don't show up or talk and things like that when you constantly cutting those pieces out of him.
Mm-hmm.
Let those people let him be able to share those things with you. And again, does it get any better than this? Just gotta learn how to shut up. And men just gotta learn how to shut up. Don't talk. Don't make it about you. Just
Yeah.
you ever see that movie when the girl was like,
right.
yeah, right,
Right. Sometimes people just want to talk and just be heard. That's it.
right.
Mm-hmm.
Like having a conversation like we're having right now. It opens up the doors, right, to more questions, because you also said something about triggers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And let's talk about some of the common ones, like um, sounds, smells,
Yeah.
places, things, people, etc. Right? Uh, but what are being someone who is a mental health advocate, I'm really curious about the uncommon triggers that people really don't. They look past, but even though it is still effective.
Hmm. What are the triggers that I think that people skip past, and they don't? Okay, so for me, I'll say this. So because of the fact, like I said, my grandmother, when I was born, my grandmother was already, if I'm not mistaken, in her like late 50s, 60s, I think. So she was older. So I was going through taking care of a elderly person when a lot of my friends weren't. And my mom, losing my mom very early, once again, is not normal for my age group at the time. So now it's triggering because a lot of my friends are going through, some of the stuff I went through 15 years ago, having to find, having a mother or a parent who it needs to be in a nursing home or needs care. So, and like I said, I'm one of those people that like, I love to be there for my friends. So when my friends are going through it, I'm there for them and hear them. But at the same time, I'm thinking about, oh my, wow, I had to do this. I remember, what this was and this was. And then, what really, is hard is when I hear stuff that I know is not good. Right. Like that's
Yeah.
hard. So like if I have a friend or associate, like I'll say this is a perfect example. Recently, there was an older lady who was went viral. She was an older woman, and she went viral because of the stuff that she would say. And she would go back and forth in the hospital. And of course, her granddaughters were putting it on TV. Put it on the social media. And I can't remember her name, but they were saying stuff that she's doing. I was like, oh, she's going through the dying process. Like I knew she was going through the dying process. And so that was hard because like I seen it and I was like, oh wow, this is because I see it as when an older person has lived this life, when they're living and they've left this legacy, I'll be like, oh wow, they lived this life, now they're about to go to peace, right? So I see it as hard for the family, but beautiful for the person in a way. And so I said something, I posted, and I was like, I had to take it down because I was like, let me take this down because I realized that my audience are people who have parents in this situation. And I basically just told them, hey, they may be about to pass away. So for me, it's triggering because it brings up all these memories of this. Like, I've seen this process and I see this going. But for them, I also have to be careful because I don't want to make somebody go through any type of trauma before they need to.
Yeah.
So and everybody grieves different too. So, for me, this, I think is beautiful, and and all these different things, but everybody ain't gonna see it that way. A lot of people not gonna see it my way.
That's very true.
So, that's very triggering. Another thing that I realized actually recently is that I had a really good friend who was very influential in my life, just like my mother and my grandmother was. Tina Hobson. She was actually a podcaster as well for many years before she got sick. And when I moved to Georgia, of course, I didn't get to see her when I came back. And when I came back to Cleveland, I didn't get to see her because of just, I got busy and I didn't prioritize going to see her. And recently she passed away. So it was really hard because I was like, I realized that, one, of course, I missed her. And I was beat myself up because I didn't go see her. But I realized that I can't see people because of the stuff I went through with my grandmother and my mother. It's very hard for me to see people very sick, like where you can see the sickness on them, where you can see that they're changed. They're changing. Their features are changed because of being sick. From being out, not with my grandmother mostly, but with my mom, because I've seen that happen to her. It was hard for me, and that was really one of the reasons why I didn't go. And or I'm not gonna say I didn't go, but I put it to the back burner. I put it in the back of my head and didn't make it a priority. I feel so bad about that because I loved her. I loved her. I appreciate her, all those things. But when it got to the end of her life, I wasn't there to show her that like I should have been. So that was something that just triggered me out of nowhere. Like, this person, I knew I loved her. I knew I appreciated her, but I never realized how influential she was to me compared to my mother and my grandmother until she passed away and she was gone. That's why it's really important, as they say, give people their flowers when they're here so they'll know.
Yeah. That what you just said right there hit my heart in a different way. And the reason being because hearing you said, there's a reality that we live in, right? And I often tell people this: most men that are in your life, and I'm a huge advocate. That's why I keep going back to the men aspect. I'm one of those guys. I stay in my lane. I stay what I know, right? You know what I'm saying? And then I learn the rest from everyone else. You know what I'm saying? So I can have a bit different perspective of the understanding, so I can be better at what I do, right? So one thing that when it comes down to men, hard reality. Most, if not all men, live in a world to where, one, we're only appreciated for what we provide. And if we cannot provide or protect, we feel useless. Two, we live in a secondary relationship, And what I mean by that, women, children, and pets are more valued in people's lives than men. That's the reality of it. And the third reality of it is most men would rather take their lives than to admit that they don't have the answers.
Yeah, I think I agree. I do agree, especially with that. Well, I agree with the third one for sure. Well, I'm gonna say this. I agree with what you're saying altogether. However, I will say I do think it could be better. I'll say that. It could be better.
Yes.
And I think
it can definitely be a lot better.
I think that
like
it has
I
to
only come from one side, so you know what I'm saying. Like when I can hear the other side, if there's people out there that do get it, right? You know what I'm saying. that means that you've opened up the doors to have a really good open
Conversation.
relationship,
Yeah.
communication wise. But for
Yeah.
the most part, coming from a male's point of view, I can only speak from the masculine man, right? You know what I'm saying? Not. I often have to tell people, be careful how you label toxic masculinity and dealing with trauma, right?
Yeah, I
You
will
know,
say, okay, so I think for me, okay, so um I agree. I do agree that all three things that you said are what is expected in a way from men. I do.
uh,
However, I do believe that it can be better and it can change, because I think that the reason why it's expected is not it's society who says
mm,
that, right?
yeah, it's
And
society.
I think that um so one of the points you said is that they would rather take their life than to say they don't have the answer, right?
Mhm.
And that's very true. I know that, suicide, and this is what I've heard. I'll say I've heard this. Suicide is really high for men, especially black men,
Oh,
at a young,
that,
at like men, right? So I get that, but I will say that it's one of those things that I feel has to be fixed by men before anybody else can get into it. And I say this because one of the things is that is um for women, we do have way more places where we can be vulnerable and open without
mhm.
judgment. You
Yes,
know,
yes.
we already women have already kind of started the movement of being in therapy and being okay with that. We really have started that. Men are it's still very taboo for men, to say they
Mhm.
want to do therapy. We also have our parents that we can go to and break down in. We
Yeah,
even if it's a father, a father would probably be, especially if a father is, you know, has been raised the same way, they're gonna be like, oh yeah, of course my little princess is supposed to come down and break down to me, but my son, he got to be a man, like he shouldn't
right,
be doing
right.
these particular things. And so we can go to our parents, we go to our we have we go, me and my friends at least once a month get together and just talk and just be vulnerable, or we can call and my friends can text me right now and be like, girl, all this stuff, and just be vulnerable with me, and I'm gonna listen and or give whatever, and just she could do those things. Um, Men don't per se do that, right? Like they don't have those. What I'll say that's new. It's new. Men, especially when they're younger, men can't go to their friends and say, man, like I'm really stressed out. They man up. Most men are not there for their friends in that particular manner. They can't go to them and say, my marriage is really, sucking right now, or I'm single and I really want to be in a relationship. And they can't do that really. It's not normal. For at least from what I see and just from the people that I've talked to. So I think that
Mhm.
men have to allow themselves to be vulnerable with each other without judgment and just, you know, take making fun of them or telling each other to man up. And I realized this because I kind of thought it, but I had seen it's this program or where men it's like a yoga. They're held by women and they're just hugging for hours, just quiet, in a atmosphere, the right atmosphere. And I looked in the comments and it was like men like, we can't do that. And it was all the women in the comment were like, oh my God, I love this. I hope this gets bigger. They were like all for it, right? And so all the men were like, it was like so many men like, no, you can't do that. We can't do that. So I think that, and I'm not saying all women, because I also seen women in comments like, he need to man up, punch him in his chest, little kids and stuff like that. Like, no, that's not
Mhm.
it either. Yeah, so
Yes,
I'm
yes.
like, yeah, so I'm not gonna say it ain't no, it's not women out here who believe men should act a certain way, but I do believe that it has to be men who start the it has to start that movement for themselves, and then as they
Okay.
start the movement and make it a priority, um then it's like they're going to demand that once men start working on their mental health and making it a priority and allowing themselves to be vulnerable, even if it's with a therapist, or if you don't believe in therapy, maybe if you go to something counselor, right? Even if it's that, being vulnerable, because what it will do, it will start to challenge women who are not doing the work at themselves, right? It will start to challenge communities, because you can no longer say, oh, my man is a narcissist, or it's toxic masculinity. You can't blame it on him no more, because he's doing the work. So he can start doing the work.
That's very true.
So now you got to do the work, and even with me, like, I've done the work, right? And I know I still have a journey to go. I've been in situations with men, and I'm like, I could have handled that differently, and I've had to go back and say, you know what, I'm sorry, I could have handled that differently. I wasn't being rational, so, a man who's working on himself will one, just be better person for himself, right? Which is really should be the goal, but it's also going to challenge the communities to make change as well. And if men want to say, if we want to say that men are there for being providers, and what I say is that a man can't, just having a job and a gun to protect women is not enough. Like, you have to be able to provide emotional stability too. And no one can do that. I can't do that for anyone else if I'm not at least trying to work on myself. So that's just my thought process. But like you said, I'm coming from my point of view. I have talked to a few people, just getting their perspective, but everybody's life is different,
Yeah. And I love that. I love that you said that. I just would like to add some things to it. There were some points that you didn't touch on, and I just want to add them to have more of a complete picture. Maybe I'm wrong, and if so, I'm always willing to learn. That's the nature of the beast, right? We're all students in this world. We're always trying to be better versions of ourselves. One thing the one thing that I want to touch on, and that you didn't touch on a little bit. So when it comes down to men, and Kaya, you're absolutely right. I was just about to touch on that right there, but I just want to add something else in there. See, when young men are being taught how to man up and things like that, you have to think about the increase of single mothers in our communities. So we're not learning how to man up from men. We're being taught these things by the women who are raising us. And what ends up happening is that when single mothers are raising young men, they tend to raise young men that's ideal for them.
I agree. That is very true.
So when you instill that into a young male, then as they grow up, who's to take responsibility for that? It's not the men, because as we all know, most men are either in prison. The system has been set up to where it's designed to keep men out of the household. They reward women for keeping men out of the household. In turn, our young men are forced to face the world without the necessary tools and the guidance from good, positive men in this world. Now, the other side to that, now, you know what I'm saying? Just let me know if you don't agree, that's fine too. Like I said,
I do agree. But I think that's but I just, to that point, I do agree. That most likely a woman is going to raise according to her experience with men. So I agree. But at the same point, once again, there's something that women can do as well as men can do. So men, if they believe,
I'm not putting blame on no one.
No, I'm not being blamed. No, I'm not doing
going on here.
Oh yeah, no blame. I'm saying like a solution, like, because I've seen certain situations, like certain programs where there are men who get together and they teach men how to do man known things, right? Like maybe take the tire, and fold the tie and leave a vulnerable space for them. So I think that men, hopefully more men, make more programs like that. And for women, realize that they do need a male, counterpart. Sign your kids up for the Boys and Girls Club. Was it Big Sisters, Big Brothers, and because, and find a male positive, not one that you're dating, just a friend or a cousin or an uncle that you can use as a role model for your, not just even a son, because as a girl, I had uncles that I could use as to look at, that like, this is what a man should look like. These are the things that men should do. Or, or my mother would make examples like, okay, this is not what men are supposed to do. So, I just hope that more programs come up. So it's not blaming anybody. I just hope that those programs
it's
open up.
equal responsibility.
Yeah,
like, I'm not putting blame on anyone, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why I say that, right, because here's the thing. When men are not emotionally intelligent,
Mm-hmm.
they tend to make bad decisions based
Mm-hmm.
off of past experiences.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't understand you have to let the past go. You can take the experience, but don't put that experience on someone else, because
Right.
everybody's different. But see, the problem is when it comes down to men and women, when we go into emotionally neglectful relationships,
Mm-hmm.
we tend to search out the red flags instead of searching out the positives in it, right? We look for reasons to self-sabotage and push ourselves away, especially when either party has not healed.
Yep.
Now,
Yeah.
here's where both parties, and all of this is where both individuals need to take, male and female need to take responsibility. You cannot ask for an emotionally intelligent partner when you're not emotionally intelligent, because what happens, male or female, if you have healed, if you are healing, in the process of healing, take the time to heal first before you jump into anything. Do not let anyone influence that path that you're on.
Yes.
Right, because it's a journey that you have to go through and be accountable for. Forgive yourself for the things that you didn't know. Right, you know what I'm saying? And what ends up happening once you start the healing process, the right things and the right people come along, and the conversation is different, because you no longer tolerate emotionally neglectful conversations, because you realize how damaging it can be to either or. Right. And so if you're asking for someone, male or female, to be emotionally intelligent, then you have to understand that you have to bring that same level of emotional intelligence and awareness to that situation. Because for one, when a person is on one path and another person's on the other path, the tolerance level is 0 to none. It's a very thin line. Because for one, I would tell you, I am not going to deal with anyone who's unhealed. I am not going to jeopardize my mental health, my emotional health, my spiritual health, my physical health, and I'm not going to jeopardize my peace of someone who is not going to take the process or go through the process and heal from the things that have been done to them. Because as you said, Ms. Jackson, I had to do the work too. So if I had to do the work, I expect the same out of you. Because for one, you're going to damage me.
Yep.
And I'm going to damage you. Right. And like you said, it's like if I'm pouring into you, and the only thing that you're doing is taking what I'm pouring into you, but you're not giving me nothing in return, and you're going to drain me. And if you drain me, I am no longer going to be good for you. So that means the trauma, the grief, all of these different things that have been going on, you might want to take some time before you wreck someone else's life or their relationship, as well as yourself, and adding to the compound the damage on top of what's already been done, and wanting to play the victim. This goes back to that language of grief, right? You know what I'm saying? Because grief is that language. You have to understand that you are a human being equipped with emotions, and you know what I'm saying, and thoughts and choices, and you have to check yourself, as you know what I'm saying, as you know what I'm saying, as I would like to tell it, and I tell people this all the time. There's times I got to check myself.
Yeah, I'm still working on me.
What I mean, right?
I'm still working on me.
But no, I just wanted to add that in there, and
no, I agree.
Thought about that, because when we think about mental health and things like that, there's so many different variations that you have to put inside of there, and then you have to take the time to dissect them and realize, oh man, I messed up. you first have to be honest with yourself. I messed up. This loss really got me. And then you have to go back in, because that's just the beginning portion of it. You have to now go back and realize where the things change and what ends up happening. You know what I'm saying? And this goes to now. This is why I say this thing is more common than what people think. That grief brain, that grief fog, right? Our minds tend to try to keep us safe, so it will change a situation or a scenario from your past to give you a more tolerable outcome in the reality that you live in, right? But it's not until you go back and actually start to dissect and be honest with yourself, because healing is truthful. You know, as a matter of fact, I was telling somebody this the other day. They was like, "Man, life is hard." I said, "No, life isn't hard." See, and I think that's where it starts, right? You have to check your tone and how you speak. Life isn't hard. As a matter of fact, here's the truth about life. Life is honest. It doesn't say I'm gonna promise you this. It doesn't guarantee you that. It doesn't say if you do this, I'm gonna give you that. Life says this is what's going to happen. You have the opportunity and the choice to take it, process it the way that you see fit. There are consequences to your actions, whether they're good or bad. And tomorrow's not promised to anyone. I'm not tough. I'm not hard. I'm not fair or unfair, but I'm truthful. It's the truth that you decide that it's going to be beneficial for you in your life's journey. That's just me. That's just,
I totally agree. I agree with everything you're saying. It's all about processing your emotions. And if you're not healed, or you haven't been taught those coping mechanisms or ways to process it, you're just going to do the first thing that comes to your mind, right? And one thing, point that you made was, when you're in a conversation or a relationship and you have a person who's in the healing process and one who is not, right? Not only can you potentially damage me, right, from all the healing that I, reopen wounds, but
exactly.
I am not helping your healing. I'm actually pushing you farther in your healing, because I was in a friendship with someone who is that person. They were healed, and they didn't have any desire to be healed. They were cool. They was at that point they were cool in their life, with their life ending with them never healing some of the stuff that they had been through. And I literally irritated them. I know I did. I'm living in this world of where I process my emotions, and I tell people sometimes I live in a world of rainbows and unicorns, and life is good even on bad days. I'm taking in and saying, okay, this is the lessons I've learned, and this was just one day, and I'm moving on, and and they would be irritated, like, well, no, life is not like that. Life is serious. Life is this, and they would send me like videos of like all these horrible things happening in the world, and I'm looking like, yeah, I know these things are happening, but my thing is like, this is my biggest thing. Yes, I know these things are happening. Yes, I am aware of these things. And if there's certain things that interest me or things I really need to know, yes, I'm going to research and learn about it. But I don't believe in bringing up problems knowing that I am not even attempting to make a solution, right? So don't bring me a problem saying, oh, well, in the world, they are all bees are, turning blue or something, like, right? That's like to say that's a problem. Okay, yeah, I heard that. Yeah, I read that. I get it. I understand what's going on. But don't continue to keep sending. Let's not harp on it unless you're gonna tell me or show me how we can fix the issue. Like, how can we help the bees? Like, even if it's like, okay, well, we need to do a fundraiser, or we need to do this. What's the point of me continuing to keep harping on this if I know that I don't have a solution? I'm not even looking for a solution. And I got all kinds of other things going on in my life that I need to find solutions for. Why waste the energy on this particular thing if I'm not going to have a solution, or I'm not ready to have a real discussion about how to fix it? Just talking about it is not going to do anything, but just put negativity in the air. That's why, like, I was telling somebody the other day, I posted something and they brought up like relationships. I was like, yeah, one of the things I don't do on social media, unless we're having a conversation like this, is I don't talk about church. I don't talk about Christian. I don't talk about religion, relationships, or politics. I'm not doing that on social media because we're not here to have a conversation about it. What's the point? You're just going to have your point and I'm going to have my point. Now, if I say something, I said what I said, that's it. I'm not having a discussion about it. I just said what I said. Now, you can have a discussion with yourself.
Oh, yeah.
That's up to you. But I'm not about to go back and forth, especially with some stranger on the internet, about something that I don't even have a solution for. Right now, if I can bring up facts, if I can say, okay, well, this is this, and this, and I got the facts, I've done the research, then I can have a conversation that is going to be productive with you. But otherwise, we just waste the air. And as my mother used to say, I could say that breath for the last one, because I'm not about to get to my life and have a recap of all the times I wasted my breath on stupid stuff. I'm not doing that. So,
I want to add to that before we start to wrap this up. And I think a lot of times this is what people do, right? And it's so simple that the truth will blow your mind. A lot of times when people have these conversations, and I'm right there with you. I don't discuss politics, relationships. As a matter of fact, my personal life is not your business. You know what I'm saying? Now, the experiences I've gone through and the knowledge that I have is mine to give freely, and you to take if you and choose to do it as you please, right? I'm not here to try to change nobody's mind. I just want to do my role in this life to provide every opportunity for people to learn, have resources so they can heal, but also understand that they're not out here by themselves. But now here's a strange truth. And reality is perception. That's why I didn't put reality in there. But here's a strange truth. Every individual in their lives go through a circle. In that circle, there's 3 points. In some cases, there's 4. What I mean by those 3 points, in everybody's life, you either play the victim, the villain, or the superhero. And sometimes you would do this, you repeat this cycle over and over in a day. You become the victim when people don't agree with you, because now you have to become defensive, right? You can become the villain in someone's life when someone it feels like when you feel it's as if someone has offended you, you now have to come back at this person and so-called put them in their place, right? You become the superhero when you see other people going through something similar than what you're going through, and you automatically have to go into superhero mode to go and save said person from said situation, because you feel that's the right thing that needs to be done. In some cases, yes. In some cases, no. You never interfere with someone else's karma, because karma will share that process with you. Right? You know what I'm saying? I say if it's not a life or death situation, you stay out of it, because you don't know what that person's going through. That's their storm. That's their storm, right? You know what I'm saying? And they have to go through a process. You don't know what that process is involved. You may be hindering this individual from becoming the best version of themselves by jumping in and trying to pull them out of that storm. Right? So you don't do that. You're there when they fall. If they need someone to sit down with them, and you stand up with them, but you have to also understand that this journey is yours. I'm going to be here because I'm a seasonal individual. I'm going to give to you what you need in order for you to be able to progress and move on. And maybe, you know what I'm saying, somewhere down the line, I may see you again, right? And I want to see the individual that you have manifested yourself into the world to be, whether it's good or bad, you know what I'm saying? And that's even subjective as well. There's no good or bad. There's just perception, right? You know what I'm saying? Good or bad is just things, terminologies that people have made up to justify actions in the world. Now, here's the 4th one. And when people can reach this level of understanding in their own lives, it changes the game for everything. everything from mental health to emotional health, et cetera, how you heal. You become an observer. And what I mean by that is that when you have the capability of understanding this vicious cycle that you are in, this person that you are in as an individual, and you can step outside and observe your life from the perception or from a different point of view, you tend to change things. You tend to not react, but to respond. You tend to speak when you have something to say. And then you tend to show up a little bit different in everybody's lives, right? And, especially when it comes down to death, dying, and healing, our conversation changes because now we come in with a different sort of understanding of how to walk with an individual or how we want people to walk with us. So we tend to not allow individuals into our life that can disrupt that flow that you're going through. But that's just my 2 cents, though.
No, no, I agree with a lot of points that you made. You do have to be careful and have a lot of discernment when you're dealing with other people, and remember that what you're supposed to do in their life, makes a difference.
That's true. Now, we can go ahead and wrap this thing up. Patrice, as always, man, I knew we was going to have a great conversation. Look at us. We all out here.
I'm sorry you were over.
As always, man, we always have a blast. For everyone who's been tuning in, thank you guys for tuning in. If you haven't already, do me a favor, head over to that YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button, hit that bell notification so you'll be notified every time we drop a new episode. We are doing things a little bit different now. We are live streaming on Instagram, Rumble, and Twitter now, right? As well as YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, and a few other platforms out there. So if you guys get the chance to share this around with other people, I'm trying to get more people in joining in these conversations and getting questions answered as well. Patrice, thank you for being on the show today. Before I let you go, though, how can people find you?
They can go to patricejackson.com, and you can find everything there, or you could just, as I say, you can Google me, Patrice MsSavvyPro Jackson, or in all social media platforms, I am MsSavvyPro.
All right. Now, I always ask my guests this: if you can leave the audience with something, what would you leave them with?
Be who you want to be when you were a kid.
Man, see, I can't with you right now because when we was kids, I wanted to be Spider-Man or Superman, right?
Hey, okay. If you break it down, that's still a possibility. You might not be able to have those because those are trademarked, but we can get you a name.
You know what? We're gonna let that be what it is, right? You know what I'm saying? We're gonna be what that is, man. As always, such an amazing person. Thank you for blessing us with your story and your knowledge. And for anyone who's tuning in, if you guys want to know more about her, information will be in the description below. And as I said before, if you know anyone who could benefit from these conversations that we have, please share them with them. And until next time, I am Tony Lynch. I'm your host of the Grief Let's Talk About It podcast. And this is going to conclude another episode. Now, stay tuned. Tomorrow, we have 2 episodes coming up. So you guys get those questions answered. I'm not going to give away too much, but if you guys are reading the description, you know who we got coming. Some amazing guests. And we talking everything from child loss to sibling loss tomorrow. And today was just another amazing day with another amazing individual, another amazing conversation. Now, with that being said, we're going to conclude this until next episode. You guys keep your head up, and remember, if you guys need help, resources, or anything like that, please reach out. We have those available. Till next episode, guys, thank you. Peace.